To deliver a major economic address in the nation's heartland with some historic overtones. The White House says the president plans to discuss economic divisions that leave so many Americans falling further behind. And he's chosen a site in Kansas where Republican President Theodore Roosevelt gave an historic 1910 speech calling for social and economic justice and more business regulation. Roosevelt called it new nationalism. Well, will that same theme resonate with Americans a century later? Let's bring our political panel, Republican consultant Tony Sayegh, and Democratic campaign consultant and the founder of 100proofpolitics.com, Ryan Clayton. Tony and Ryan, welcome.
How are you?
Good.
Thanks for having us.
Tony, let me start with you. What does it mean if a Democratic president, now, a century later, is trying to take up TR's banner?
Well, listen, Republicans often cite John Kennedy, who was the first president to espouse supply-side economic principles. So there's always going to be inconsistency if you're going to look at historical context, because things have changed. Don't forget, it was Democrats who were the segregationists back in the 60s. And today you have minorities supporting Democrats in overwhelming numbers, 90% among African-American voters. So I wouldn't read too much into the historical context. That's all about political theater, which is all President Obama has left. His record on the economy is abysmal, particularly with the middle-class related issues. Home values down 33% since he's been president. Gas prices up. Inflation on food products, which most middle-class Americans have to buy, is up. His record serving the middle class does not meet the standards. So all he can do is divide on cultural and class lines, and that's what you're going to hear more of in this speech.
Ryan, political theater, and will he be dividing on cultural and class lines?
Well, what the president's going to do is say, look, our economy is not working for most Americans right now because our economy is based on a balance of supply and demand. And right now there's just simply no demand in our economy. And supply-side solutions, the radical right-wing social experiment of trickle-down economics, erasing all regulation, eliminating all taxes on the rich, that just hasn't worked. What we need right now is we need Americans with money in their pockets, Americans with jobs, so they can go out there and spend it in small businesses around this country. That's the only thing that's going to kickstart our economy right now, and that's what President Obama is set to do when he gives this speech. He's going to say, look, we need jobs now. We've tried the Wall Street solution. We've tried trickle-down economics. What we got was a Wall Street meltdown. We got bank bailouts. We got a foreclosure epidemic, and we got an unemployment emergency. It's time to try something different. It's time to get our country back on track. It's time to put Americans back to work.
Well, that almost sounds like what Teddy Roosevelt said 100 years ago. He said that corporations should be controlled and regulated. He said no corporate fund should go for political purposes. The Supreme Court has already shot down that one with the Citizens United decision, and that officers should be held responsible if they break the law. That sounds like Occupy Wall Street, Tony.
Well, listen, at the same time, you had no antitrust laws under Teddy Roosevelt. You had no real labor laws protecting people who worked. You had no real unionization, which at its inception was a very good idea. It's gotten a little bit out of control. But let's go back to what Ryan said. Listen to what he said. All taxes on the rich, Republicans want to eliminate. All regulations, Republicans want to eliminate. That's ridiculous. And if President Obama is going to try to make that kind of speech after 3 years of being president, raising the debt by 40%, spending trillions of dollars we don't have on stimulus programs that do not work, he's not going to get very far with the American people, particularly with middle-class voters who are so strongly aligning with the Republican Party, as you saw in 2010. This is the fascinating stuff, Eric. Affluent voters today are more likely to support President Obama. Middle-class voters are more likely to support the Republican nominee. We see.
Well, that's because there's less people in the middle class right now because of all of these bankrupt policies that Republicans and their Wall Street sponsors have been pushing for decades now. They're erasing the middle class. They're literally destroying the middle class in America. Out of the top 5 stocks in retail recently, 2 of them or 3 of them were dollar store, general retail. This is like we're seeing the elimination of the middle class right before our very eyes.
The clock is ticking. Let me show you one point, though, I don't think the president will bring up. That is from Teddy Roosevelt's speech. The president, he was a year out of office, and this is what he said during that speech. Quote, "No man is worth his salt in public life who makes on the stump a pledge which he does not keep after election. And if he makes such a pledge and does not keep it, hunt him out of public life." Ryan, what about the president's broken promises?
Look, the president's got a lot of weight on his shoulders, and he's got a lot of problems to fix after 8 years of George W. Bush. I think we all know that. And he's been hard at work doing that. He passed historic health care reform. He's put financial regulations back in place that the Republicans tried to eliminate over the last few decades. And what he's doing is creating a reversal of the course of our country. He's putting us back on track. He's recreating a middle class in this country because Republicans that are sponsored by Wall Street only want to give away tax breaks to millionaires, billionaires, and trust fund kids who live off family fortunes who want to keep paying less.
All right,
if that's not class warfare, I don't know what is.
You know what? Let's just mention this because I'm sure I don't have enough time to make the complete point. No president has gotten more from Wall Street than President Obama, and he represents a lot of their interests in this crony capitalist method that he's adopting. He's also believes in a system, by the way, Ryan, that does not believe in the traditional American middle class. They need people in their society to all be takers with very few makers. That's what you have in Europe. Greatest good for greatest number.
Well,
middle class make enough for themselves, but they don't take much from the government.
That'll
so
be it, and he'll be
government.
channeling Teddy Roosevelt in a couple of days. Ryan and Tony, thanks so much.
Thank you.